For decades, Star Wars fans and casual viewers alike have framed Ahsoka Tano's departure from the Jedi Temple as a tragedy. They see it as a moment of surrender, a broken promise, a young padawan walking away from her destiny and abandoning the order that raised her. Many even blame her choice for pushing Anakin Skywalker closer to the dark side, arguing that her loss was the final crack in his already fragile resolve. This narrative is not just wrong, it is a complete reversal of the truth. Ahsoka's choice to leave the Jedi Order was not an act of cowardice or abandonment or defeat. It was an act of profound moral courage, of unshakable integrity, and of radical loyalty to the very core of what the Jedi were supposed to stand for. To understand why, we must first unpack the full context of that fateful decision, the betrayal that led to it, and the decay of the Jedi Order that made her departure the only honorable choice she could make. The story of Ahsoka's fall from grace within the Jedi Order begins in the 5th season of the Clone Wars, with a bombing in the Jedi Temple hangar on Coruscant. The explosion killed several clone troopers and injured countless others. In the aftermath, the Jedi Council launched an investigation, and all evidence quickly pointed to Ahsoka Tano. Security footage showed her near the hangar before the explosion. DNA evidence linked her to the nanodroids used in the bomb. Her fellow Padawan, Barriss Offee, claimed to have seen Ahsoka communicating with Separatist agents. To the Jedi Council, already reeling from the pressures of the Clone Wars, already paralyzed by fear and paranoia about Sith infiltration, the case was open and shut. Ahsoka, a young Padawan with a history of pushing back against their orders, was a traitor. They did not stop to question the evidence. They did not stop to consider that it might be fabricated. They did not stop to see the young woman they had raised, who had fought beside them for years, who had given everything to the Order. They only saw a threat, and they moved to eliminate it. Ahsoka was arrested and locked in a cell. When she escaped, with the help of her friend Asajj Ventress, the Council labeled her a fugitive and ordered Anakin Skywalker to hunt her down. They did not care that she was running to find the truth, to prove her innocence. They only cared that she had defied their authority and that she had become a liability to the Order's public image. The Republic was already growing skeptical of the Jedi's role in the war, and the Council feared that a Jedi Padawan being accused of terrorism would erode what little public trust they had left. So they threw Ahsoka under the bus without a second thought. They sacrificed the child they had raised to protect their own reputation. This is the first critical detail that the fallen apprentice myth ignores. The Jedi Order did not just fail Ahsoka. They actively betrayed her. They abandoned one of their own at the moment she needed them most because it was politically convenient. When Anakin finally tracked Ahsoka down, he did not arrest her. He listened to her, he believed her, and he set out to find the real culprit, to prove that she was innocent. His investigation led him back to Barriss Offee, who he confronted in the Jedi Temple. Barriss confessed to the bombing and to framing Ahsoka for the crime. But her confession was not a moment of remorse. It was a searing, unflinching indictment of the Jedi Order itself. Barriss told Anakin that she had bombed the temple because the Jedi had lost their way. She said that the Order had become a violent, corrupt war machine that had abandoned every principle it was founded on. She said that the Clone Wars had not been fought for peace, but for power. That the Jedi were no longer peacekeepers, but soldiers, willing to sacrifice innocent lives to win a war that should never have been fought. She said that the Order had turned to the dark side, and that it had turned her to the dark side too. These were not the words of a Sith Lord or a separatist terrorist. These were the words of a Jedi Padawan who had grown up in the temple, who had seen the decay of the Order from the inside. And Ahsoka Tano heard every word of that confession. With Ahsoka's innocence proven, the Jedi Council was forced to reverse its decision. They invited her back into the Jedi Order. They apologized for doubting her, and they offered to promote her directly to the rank of Jedi Knight, skipping the trials that every other Jedi had to complete. To an outside observer, this looked like a happy ending. A wrong had been righted. Ahsoka had been vindicated, and she was being given everything she had ever worked for. But to Ahsoka, it was not a victory. It was a final, devastating confirmation that the Jedi Order was irreparably broken. The Council was not apologizing because they truly believed they had done wrong. They were apologizing because they had been caught. They were not welcoming her back because they valued her, or trusted her, or believed in her. They were welcoming her back because it was the only way to cover up their own failure, to pretend that the system still worked. They were offering her a promotion, not as a reward for her courage, but as a bribe, to make her stay quiet about what they had done to her and about what the Order had become. Ahsoka saw through it all. She saw that the Council had not learned anything from what had happened. They had not questioned their own choices, or their own paranoia, or their own complicity in the corruption of the Order. They had not apologized to her for abandoning her, for labeling her a traitor, for throwing her to the wolves. They had only apologized for being wrong. And she knew, in her heart, that if the same situation happened again, they would do the exact same thing. They would sacrifice her, or any other Jedi, if it meant protecting their own power, their own status, their own political influence. She knew that the Order she had joined as a child, the Order of noble peacekeepers and compassionate guardians, no longer existed. It had been replaced by a cold, calculating, political body that cared more about winning the war than about upholding the Jedi Code, and she knew that she could not stay a part of it. This is the second critical detail that the fallen apprentice myth misses. Ahsoka did not leave the Jedi Order because she was angry, or hurt, or bitter. She left because she could not, in good conscience, be a member of an order that had abandoned its own core values. She left because staying would have meant compromising her integrity, her principles, and her commitment to the Jedi way. The Jedi Code taught her to seek truth, to act with compassion, to defend the innocent, to stand up for what is right, even when it is hard. The Jedi Order had abandoned all of those things, so she chose to leave, to uphold the code herself, even if it meant doing it alone. This is not the act of a fallen apprentice. This is the act of a true Jedi. The myth also claims that Ahsoka's departure was a betrayal of Anakin Skywalker, that it pushed him over the edge into the dark side. This could not be further from the truth. Anakin was the only person who stood by Ahsoka, who believed in her, who fought for her. He was the only one who saw what the Order had done to her, and he was furious about it. He begged her to stay, to come back to the Order with him, to fight to change it from within. But Ahsoka knew that the Order could not be changed from within. She knew that the rot was too deep. And she also knew that Anakin was too attached to the Order, too attached to his position as a Jedi Knight, too attached to the approval of the Council to see what she saw. She did not betray Anakin by leaving. She made the only choice she could to stay true to herself. And Anakin's fall to the dark side was not caused by Ahsoka's departure. It was caused by his own fear, his own attachment, his own inability to let go of control, and the manipulations of Darth Sidious, who had been grooming him for years. Ahsoka's choice did not break Anakin. The Jedi Order's betrayal of her, and of everything they stood for, was just one more piece of evidence that Anakin could not trust the system that was supposed to protect him. When Ahsoka walked down the steps of the Jedi Temple, out into the pouring rain, she did not fall. She rose. She left behind a broken system, a corrupt institution, a group of people who had proven that they would not stand by her even when she needed them most. She walked into an uncertain future, with no home, no family, no title, no support, in the middle of a galaxy at war. She had every reason to be bitter, to be angry, to turn her back on the Jedi Code entirely. But she did not. She spent the rest of her life upholding the very principles that the Jedi Order had abandoned. She protected the innocent. She fought against tyranny. She stood up for what was right, even when it cost her everything. She did exactly what a Jedi is supposed to do. She just did it without the title, without the temple, without the council. The Fallen Apprentice myth also fails to recognize the incredible courage it took for Ahsoka to leave. For more than a decade, the Jedi Order was her entire life. It was the only home she had ever known. The Jedi were the only family she had ever had. Being a Jedi was the only identity she had ever had. To walk away from all of that at the age of 17 was an act of incredible bravery. It would have been so much easier to stay, to accept the promotion, to forgive the council, to pretend that nothing had changed, to hold on to her title, her status, her home, her master. But Ahsoka chose the harder path. She chose the path of integrity, of principle, of courage. She chose to leave everything behind, rather than compromise what she believed in. That is not the act of a fallen apprentice. That is the act of a hero. In the years that followed, the Jedi Order would pay the ultimate price for its corruption and its hypocrisy. Darth Sidious executed Order 66, and the clone troopers turned on their Jedi generals, wiping out almost the entire Order in a single day. The temple was destroyed. The code was abandoned. The Jedi were all but erased from the galaxy. The very thing that Barriss Offee had warned about, the very thing that Ahsoka had seen coming, came to pass. The Jedi Order's own decay, its own hypocrisy, its own blindness, had led to its destruction. And the only Jedi who survived, who thrived, who continued to uphold the light side of the Force were the ones who had seen the rot and had walked away. Ahsoka Tano was the first of those. The myth of the fallen apprentice is a comfortable lie. It allows us to believe that the Jedi Order was still noble, still good, still worth saving, right up until the end. It allows us to frame Ahsoka's choice as a mistake, a failure, a moment of weakness. But the truth is far more powerful and far more inspiring. Ahsoka did not fail the Jedi Order. The Jedi Order failed her, and in walking away, she did not abandon the Jedi way. She saved it. She kept the flame of the Jedi Code alive, long after the Order that created it had burned to the ground. She became the very thing the Jedi were always supposed to be, not because of the title, but in spite of it. When we look back at that moment, when Ahsoka walks down the temple steps and into the rain, we should not see a tragedy. We should see a triumph. We should see a young woman who has been betrayed, hurt, and abandoned, choosing to stay true to herself and to the principles she believes in. We should see the birth of one of the greatest heroes the Star Wars galaxy has ever known. We should see the end of the fallen apprentice myth and the beginning of the story of Ahsoka Tano, the warrior who redefined what it means to walk in the light.